Here we are in DAK. This is going to be the beginning of the February, I know I don't have it set up yet, but of the February 1941 turn. I guess the biggest thing is, in the story so far, is that I discovered we're playing a what-if scenario, which is, what if the Allies didn't get enough supplies, enough rail capacity of their supplies for about a month, because, no, more than a month, for 3 months or something. Pretty heavy amount. So November, December, January, most of January, I ended up having the railway network only carrying 2 tokens of supplies, as they do on the first 2 turns of the game, and instead of a full supply point. And that is actually huge, and that has slowed down the British ability to throw the Italians off pretty heavily. Now, my potential errors in defensive structure, in expenditures of supply for the Italians, in terms of building a lot of these, although historically they built, I think, almost as many as I did, of building these hedgehogs, might be something of a counterbalancing weight, but honestly, I should be fighting, I think, at Tobruk at this point, not just approaching Bardia, which is what's happened. The Italians put some pressure on at Mersa Matrua early in the game. The Brits slowly chased them back without actually fighting much. The 7th Armored Division has not lived up to its expectations for a couple of reasons. One is lack of fuel and supplies, and another is they just did not give, well, I didn't give them any artillery support, and they just did not get lucky with their attacks and their high-quality units, and ended up getting battered pretty heavily. British air power, the British are outclassed here. The Italians have been, and this has nothing to do with any mistakes that I've made as far as I can tell. The British have been outgunned by the Italian Air Force and have no fighters left. They just have 1 bomber back there. On the other hand, the Italians are beginning to take some hits. Last turn, and I think I forgot to report this, their best bomber got hit. I may want to start pulling units off the Fliegen Corps to get less supplies in order to improve the number of fighters and bombers that I have available on the field, because using air units is more efficient supply-wise. The problem is, if I start losing units of the Fliegen Corps, I must replace them as quickly as possible. And I think they may still count as detachments, but I'm not sure. But anyway, whatever I lose of that, I have to replace very quickly. So there's a cost to taking losses on them, which may hinder my willingness to commit them. All right. Well, we continue to blunder through. It's Thursday, pretty enough, and I got up early enough. I actually moved a fair amount of wood around. And more than that, I got my chainsaw working and cut one of the big logs. My intention was to cut the big logs, but it was hard to get to them, so I had to move a lot of crap off of them, and by the time I got through cutting one log to begin with that was exposed, and then the others, I was sweating and tired and everything. I was also filthy, so I've got like dedicated work clothes for this. You know, I can put it, I'm such a wimp now, but I always was weak, right? Like, when it comes to doing work like this. And when we first moved in here, maybe I'd put in a couple hours of work at a time, but now it's like an hour, you know, and I am exhausted. And that was the case when I last remembered, and but it's more than I normally do. All right, I've got to work my way through getting this set up for the month because I neglected that. In terms of Gloomhaven, well, I'm working my way through the rules, you know. I've gotten through the basic rules for a scenario. I think I can try to play one again. I really want to, you know, I mean, that game has been in limbo for, God, at least 5-6 years. Just sitting down there open. It's like, what the hell, dude? Just do it. Yeah. Yeah. And I don't know. But one way or another, I either have to play some. Well, I have to play some, give it a shot. See what my feelings are. I'm beginning to realize what I really dislike about it is this sort of very Eurofied game, make lots of interesting decisions type bullshit in something where when I really want it was the same kind of campaign structure with something more like Hero Quest when it comes down to it. You know, I'm not that interested in this, you know, try to puzzle out how I can get the best advantages out of these few cards that I have and all that shit. And it just, it doesn't feel good to me. What it feels like is Mage Knight, which I don't mind playing with others. Like my wife and I think we had fun playing Mage Knight. I think we would have had fun with Gloomhaven. I did not have, there's this weird car that I assume they're for the people across the street, but they were parked in front of my yard for a while. I assume that I'm just not going to get much of a kick out of it. And it's really a shame because it was too expensive a game and too exciting a concept for what it ended up being. I really would much rather something, you know, like Dungeon Degenerates was a little closer, right? But I'm not a big fan of the artwork in that, to be honest. Someone asked how I have my counter trace set up. And I answered in the comments, but just because that might be of interest to other people. Basically, I divide by division first, where that's applicable. So I have full divisions stacked up. And then largely it's by type of unit. Other than that, and then I paw through looking for what specifics I want to do. Obviously, I could divide up better, you know, more in more detail than that because I have a lot of space on these counter trays. But well, for the Brits, but for the Axis, it's pretty tight already. So. So this is working relatively well. I still have to pull out a stack and paw through it to look for specific units, shit like that. I could see other ways of doing it, like sorting, you know, by date of entry or something. That would be really worthwhile as well. But yeah, I just I thought I'd give you that. I don't know what the fuck these are. I guess it's not a big deal if they don't make it on the board. They're like the Egyptian army or something, but I don't remember how they come into play. And yeah, all right. Me pausing like that at the end, it's like I know I'm reaching for something else that I meant to say and didn't. And in this case, it had to do with my body is so tired from that hour of work or whatever that yeah, it is a pretty day. That it's hard to just bend over and pick counters and shit like that. I've gotten that weak. Running into an issue here. So normally, these are listed with their strength and then the unit indication there. Now here in February, I see 4 RTR Armored Battalions, 643. Well, the first thing I do is I go and look for my armor battalions And I've got, this is a support unit, but I've got 4 of them. Is that what it's meaning? I doubt it. And they're not all 6.3.4s. One's a 6.2.3, and none of them are 4 RTR. So that's problematic to begin with. I'm not seeing it. Now maybe it's squirreled in a division, and I'm not seeing that because of that. So anyway, it says, then after that, there's no period, but there is a capital, well, there's a lot of capitals. Add to dead pile can only be rebuilt when 4 RTR non-rebuildable is killed. That sounds reasonable. But now we have colon, 4 RTR armored battalion, 623 rebuildable. I don't know what that's going to be. We're also going to see the Greeks showing up now, and the 2nd New Zealand is released, which means I can shift these guys. There aren't a lot of them on the board. But I was unable to find the 4 RTR in here. I was unable to find it over there. I'll keep looking, but this, and I found nothing about it here. Following, you know, the kinds of sorting, etc., that I was just kind of extolling, I'm just not fucking seeing these pieces. I discovered the cause of the confusion. So the armored RTR, Royal Tank Regiment, I guess, units are, there's too many for one stack, so I actually had them in 2 stacks. This happened to me before. I just found the 2nd stack, which actually has the 4 RTR in it. And now I looked through, and I should be able to find 2 units of the 4 RTR, and that's going to explain this. So now, what do I get here? The 4 RTR Armored Battalion 643 is coming in this turn. So that's going to be entering, oh, sorry, not this turn. This will be on turn 5. That'll be entering on turn 5. And at the same time, but I'm going to do it now because it doesn't matter, add to dead pile can only be rebuilt when it's gone. My body's complex. This unit now will be added there. I'm going to put that as one of these upside downs, which indicates that it's rebuildable when the better unit dies. And that's what's intended there. The New Zealanders actually are not released yet. I'll put this there to remind me of that. Again, like I'm using whatever techniques I can to remind me of the different things. So for example, the Italians, I've put this over here to remind me that they're going to start getting points. Of course, they're not going to get these points. They're going to get these. Doesn't really make a difference, but because it's just a reminder piece, it doesn't indicate. But from now on, they start rolling for their replacements. You can see the kind of pain in the ass that the reinforcements, etc., are causing, and the difficulty in finding stuff. You know, one little problem like not having things stacked or whatnot. I know that these are pretty good because there are no errata in there for them. So, you know, a couple of years in, if there are no errata in a gamer's game, you know that they've got the sequence, that particular, whatever you're looking for, you know it's probably pretty much nailed down. You might find rules ambiguities or things that you have difficulty understanding, but they usually clear those up as well. I really miss getting this every year. I would kind of like if I got an electronic version of it every year, you know, because it would remind me, hey, look, here's here's the new errata that came out this year. It's just consolidated in one place instead of the, do I want to look for errata, which is what I do in every other company, right? Is I question, am I going to bother? With this, it was always very cool because I would get my little newsletter or whatever, and I would look at it and look for the games that I had, and I would go correct those each year. Now I have more of the games that are covered in it. Their stable of games has gotten bigger. Even sending it out, even maintaining and sending out an electronic version of this would probably be too much of a pain in the ass. But I do miss it so much, especially that it came with counters and everything. It was just like, this is back when the gamers, you know, before they got associated with MMP, and they were the gold standard in terms of any kind of customer service and everything. GMT definitely took that crown away at some point around 2010 or so, where they started doing things like, we fucked up on our rule book. Here's a replacement rule book, you know, that's been edited and then reprinted completely. And they gave you counter sheets for the games that you ordered and whatnot. Like if you were missing, like there were some fucked up counters for like Here I Stand. They weren't absolutely necessary. Now, they charge you a few bucks for that service. I don't know. I don't know how I feel. I feel like it's dropped below. It's gotten down to, you know, kind of the feeling of, oh yeah, if you buy a C3i, you'll get the, you know, the fixed counters or something like that. It's not at that level because C3is are a lot more expensive than the couple bucks for the counter sheet. But that couple bucks for the counter sheet feels like the cost of like an old S&T magazine game, right? Because that's what they were by subscription. So it's like, you know, anything that, including postage and whatnot, costs, and you know, those counter sheets with postage, I don't remember what they came to, but under $5, but still. They came to an amount that like my little brain says, that's like the cost of a new magazine game off the shelf, even though they, you know, in the 90s they were like $10 each and much worse. I don't know. Turning into a fucking nightmare. Okay, so making my way down to here, I've covered everything else into there. 9th Austrian Division, 20th Austrian Infantry, Australian Infantry Brigade, fine. 9th Australian Training Marker, I had trouble finding that. I'm putting that in here because it's locked already. It's not going to have any effect. Just to keep it off of you know, the per turn reinforcements. Okay, all good there. Replace 7th Armored Division, 3rd Hussars Light Armored Battalion, 2410 non-rebuildable, with 3rd Hussars Light Armored Battalion, 2310 rebuildable. Well, again, I pulled out my 7th Armored, and I have a 7th Hussars. I actually have 2 of them. I do not seem to have the 3rd Hussars, and the 7th Hussars are light as well. Yeah, well, some of them are. I don't know if they all were. No, I don't. I only have 1. Yeah, I don't know where that is. Now, it could have slipped into a different pile. That happens. That's the first problem with this piece. Then we get here, remove 1 Australian Corps headquarters. Now, we got the Australian Corps headquarters up here, exchange the 13th Corps headquarters with the 1 Australian Corps headquarters. We just exchanged the Western Desert Force for the 13th Corps. Come on, you're just... At this point, first of all, at this point, you're just basically showing that, hey, we can make you do extra work for no particular reason. Because in this case, the Australians are actually the same rating as the 13th Corps. But then it just gets fucking removed right afterwards, and the Brits have no command, no headquarters whatsoever. Well, that's the end of the offensive, basically. That's what it's saying. I don't know. But yeah, the Brits are in a lot of trouble given that. I can't try to make up. Basically, I can't make up for the fact that I got a slow roll started. Like, even if I had all my supplies and whatnot and delayed a little bit, I'd just be fucked. Probably unable to take Tobruk. I'm almost certainly unable to now because I've taken, you know, those hits on the supply and whatnot, which is going to be problematic. If this was Africa Corps, we could call it right here, because if you know, if Tobruk ends up, not that Africa Corps starts at this point, but if Tobruk ends up falling to the Axis quickly, they win, and if it doesn't, they lose. You know, and it basically comes down to a single die roll from what people who understand the game tell me. I'm like, yeah, I don't understand it that way. I just have fun. But yeah, I don't fucking know where this unit is. I can look over here, and there's my 3rd Hussars, irreplaceable. But I don't know where its replacement counter is. Now also, this would be problematic. If this unit died, technically I should put it in the dead units pile, but I've been putting non-replaceable units into the baggie. Now I checked there as well, simply because maybe it's there, but it's also, it's not there, it's not up here. It may have squirreled into some space in the counter tray that I wasn't counting on. I tell you, it's almost like it's just not worth playing when you've got this much exchanging. You know, I'm checking my mail to see if I get anything. My neighbor gets something, and do I get anything? Come on. I hate this. It's like, okay, no. Sometimes she fiddles around and, you know, has to sort them out. And she's sorting the next one and whatever. But it's like when I notice, I'm like, I want to know, do I have to go down and get the mail? Yeah, like Desert Fox is bad enough. But with a game of this size, this kind of solution is just fucking obnoxious. It really is. But again, I will go pecking through piles to see if something ended up in the wrong space. But I'm getting sick of this, man. I'm getting sick of this. Mainly because I'm fatigued from dealing with the wood and whatnot, and my body is just not able to handle the bending over, hunting for counters and all that. Getting too old. And I'm lucky enough to have found it. It was not slipped out of a place. It's here, all on its own. Why? Because it's not part of the 7th Armored any longer. And if we look at this, they say 7th Armored Division this with Hussars Light Armor Battalion. It doesn't say 7th Armored. So this is now an independent unit, which of course sucks, because it means I can't use joint refueling and everything. Yeah, presumably it might give me a little bit more flexibility, but not really, because in DAK, you actually have a built-in flexibility. You can like detach divisional units without any cost. Oh boy. But I'm still very pissed off about this. Let's bring in the Australian Corps headquarters for 1, 2, 3 turns and then remove it. And I'm also very disturbed by the fact that the Brits no longer have any capability to attack, as far as I can tell. At least for this turn. Looks like here is where the Germans and additional Italians are going to come in. By that point, I should have Tobruk, and I should have fought Beta Fram and everything, and I have not. and will not have. That's obvious. I probably will not have Tobruk. I'm lucky if I get Bardia. Get further into the Axis. All right. First of all, it doesn't give me a date here. It just says Axis General, 2 truck points. Okay, I guess they show up there in the new space. Optional entry, okay, no. And I've got a few more units. I've got these light armored I found. I haven't found this 216 light armored. What number is it? 4 light. There it is. These are part of the Ariete division. Great. Okay. Then I get the Trento division. Fine. I haven't gotten to that. However, there's an optional rule, optional entry July 41. I don't know what the fuck that is. Okay. Yeah, I can bring Trento in as a motorized or non-motorized. If I bring it in as motorized, I don't get these trucks. I don't want motorized, right? I'm going to have, if I don't have those trucks, I'm going to have less supply moving, and it's going to be motorized units that I have to fuel up to use. So fuck that, right? Okay, but we keep going. We got all these additional units. We have a removal. Okay, I'm all good with this. I guess this just happens on the first turn. It doesn't say that, but I guess. Remove the Babini marker. And then we have available 12th of February, 41 and after. Move to the old box even if some of the above Italian units remain there. And I don't know. Restrictions on private property damage ends, fine. Some German reserves, fine. I think what it means is that these will get shifted into there no matter what. But I don't know. I really don't know. Do I have to shift these units in and only the units that are up here, the Italians that are up here that show up, I guess on the first turn? Again, this is kind of cryptic, but we got to swap batteries and cry. It's funny because it's like if you go to detailed campaigns in the Napoleonic era and everything, there usually are not swap units in and out and all kind of crap like this. Sure, there's equipment changes and stuff that's taking place here that makes things a little different. But it feels like, I guess the biggest thing is the retaining some sort of, these are the precise units that were there and all that. And, they're factors. There's a 1 point difference in factors and everything. If you look at anything from, like, the periods that I'm happier with, and that maybe I'd be more willing to cope with this shit, but I doubt it. They give you more generic rules to handle that sort of stuff. Take a look at the Zucker Napoleonic operational games, for example. You have strength point tracks that you can track what specific units have on them. Quality could be tracked in similar sort of ways, whatever. You don't have all this, a unit's got 2 more strength points or 1 less quality point or something like that, shifted in and out and in and out and all this fucking garbage. And it feels like, this game has a certain feeling to it. But I was considering, like, I think it was Der Weltkrieg, where, was it Der Weltkrieg? Yeah, it was. Where you have these individual units being swapped in and out and all kind of crap like that. And you're keeping track of individual, like, damage to individual units. And it just felt like the game could have been handled with a more generic strength point system rather than all these specific units, which make it almost impossible to make your line, equally strong where you want it to be or whatever. it's like there's this fixation of 20th century gamers on getting the unit numbers just right, and and making sure that if a unit was there for an extra 2 weeks, take it out and put a different one in, if it got renamed for a little while, or if it got replaced for a little while, or whatever. It's just like, what the fuck? Why are you so interested in this detail, this level of detail? I want the big picture, right? I want it in detail, but I don't necessarily care if John is at the front line or if it's Sam. I really don't. Because I just feel like the level of the operations that we're looking at could do without that level of detail. It's like individual shells being tracked in naval rules in a grand strategic game. It's like, no, it's the wrong level for that. For this, I really, unit designations, whether something's, either make it part of a division or don't. And there would have been no harm to leaving that unit as part of the 7th Armored. None whatsoever, because you can essentially use divisional units as independents whenever you like. Of course, there are other factors to it. It did change its quality level because it's 7th Armored, and 7th Armored is good to begin with, and then turns to shit or turns average. It's fantastic to begin with, and then as soon as it takes a hit or it gets replaced due to dates, it becomes not so good. So you can't even husband these guys and use them later for their advantages. And that does not feel like I'm making the right decisions, right? Like, oh, 7th Armored is really gung-ho right now and really good. Even though they might get better equipment later, they're going to be lousier. Even though they might not have taken any losses, and you'd think they'd still have the esprit de corps, etc. No, they just disintegrate, they deteriorate if you don't use them as they were historically used. And I feel kind of scripted and boxed in by that. And a number of things that are really kind of cranking me about this game right now. I am thoroughly and completely wiped out at this point. I've gotten everything in place. I moved the new Italian units into here. They may not be able to leave the new box, but no matter what, the Africa Corps can come in. I'm not sure about those trucks. They're in kind of a weird limbo space when you think about it. So like, Access General 2 truck points, I'm assuming that they show up in that new box. But then all of this is, I think, kind of skippable, right? I'm assuming the trucks are too. And basically, the German stuff will be able to show up in the old box, which means I can bring it on more quickly to Tripoli. Still doesn't mean that, like, it's available to use. If you look at the historical situation, the Germans have to traverse from Tripoli. They've lost everything of any importance on map. But I'm not expecting that to be the case, so I'm expecting the Dutch Africa Corps to be showing up, reinforcing Italian positions that are already in place and trying to throw the Brits back. We'll see what happens. But right now, I feel like I've done a lot of work and a lot of video for little or no, for no gameplay, right? Oh well. These guys, they're in their first month. It's late in the month that they'll pick up their second month marker, which means that if somehow the Axis ends up throwing the Brits back, they may not get the supplies that they want to get by capturing stuff. But, if we can send the Brits running, if we can win this, just because the Brits didn't they transported about half the supplies by rail that they should have for 3 months. So we'll see how big a difference that makes, right? Might be enough, might be enough. Okay, so here we are at the beginning of February, actually ready to play. I've got the counters pulled out. I had no events, no weather. Italians get the initiative roll, but they've got an exposed unit that would be in trouble. Their air units are used up. They're probably going to need to go first, just to protect things. But there's something I don't know quite when it happens. The Greek campaign status roll. I think I roll 2 dice, and if I get a 2, something happens. But I ought to probably look that up and make sure that I understand it. It was something I sort of skipped and then jumped in here. A little bit of funky wording here, but I think what happens is you roll, and if you get the number, it's fine. Eventually, it'll hit automatic. And then that moves it forward 1 box, the status here. Let's see how this is worded. Advance the marker advance the marker away if the roll is greater than or equal to. Do not advance the marker again until the first successful roll after the roll is automatic. So I think what happens is this is to change the status 1 box. And if I get any success here, I skip down to the, I don't start advancing it until I hit the next set of die rolls. That could be better expressed there so that, like, you know, it tells me which box I'm in or whatever, but I think that's the intention there. I move those guys forward. We've still got some green units on the board. Okay. To be sure, and you know, I mean, I'm really going into a lot more detail in this than I generally like to in games, but I gotta straighten that out with more than one hand, I guess. I did catch, look, this is up to 2 and brought the full in. I did not choose to bring in any Fliegenkorps elements. Maybe I should. I don't know, but I'm getting some more planes later, and we'll see how that works out. I can only choose the Fliegenkorps option at the beginning of each month, but the Brits don't get planes until halfway through, and I kind of like that +2 modifier. That means I'm getting more shipping into Tripoli, which is going to be really important right now. I apparently misunderstood what somebody was suggesting putting under, wasn't suggesting putting anything over the board, which would make life harder, but rather putting something under the board to prevent the table cracks from happening. Now, if I had a better choice of tables, or I have, you know, things I could do this with, I could actually bolt the tables together in temporary fashion, a little bit of drilling and whatnot. That would actually do a lot of good too. But this other idea, I don't know what it was called, but essentially I could probably do the same with cardboard. I also have some foamy matting that I might be able to use, but I don't have enough of that. I have tons of cardboard because, well, one, yeah. I burn some of it, I throw some of it out, and I have tons of it left from my move in terms of, like, I bought boxes, and I'm like, well, I'm not going to just throw my boxes out, and I don't know who needs them. You know, I don't want to rely on that whole sort of, oh, does anybody need boxes type of narrative. I never have enough friends that's an issue. I mean, if I had a friend who needed boxes, I could provide them with some. But I don't want to count on that. And so, you know, but worse comes to worse, I go into the fireplace. Because I'm not planning on moving again, but who knows? Okay. But anyway, I think some cardboard underneath might actually work, and that would be pretty easy to cut pieces to size. Would it be wise? I don't know. I don't know how much it would help, but it couldn't hurt much, I hope. Anyway, what the hell am I doing? I don't know. I just wanted to mention that, yeah, I don't know the terms of the materials and whatnot. So like you talk about using sheets of something, and I'm like, well, whatever it is to get the modular effect, it would have to be something. So it has to straddle the cracks of the tables, but I have to be able to fit it in configurations like I had for Central Front, because not all games, the reason I like the modular tables is because I can do weird shaped games, essentially. But, for something like this, yeah, one big sheet would work fine. I don't know, a piece of linoleum, anything. Really, a lot of things could work on this, even felt or something. Another thing is I could actually, pin the map down into a material like that. I don't know why I'm babbling so much, mainly because I probably don't want to play. I just want to talk. Italian turn, not much happened. Flew a truck in here. But one thing I almost caught, or almost failed, was to roll on this table. I put my little marker there to remind me. Ended up getting some replacement manpower, shipped that into Tobruk. Gonna build some machine gun units and whatnot. Just get some high quality stuff so that every hex is kind of defended. And we kick the table. We forgot to move this thing. It's not gonna do much, but it's a step, If I get like an option, it can eat up an option one, or it can eat up an extra result. It's not, I'm never going to use it as my lead unit, so another unit's going to take the first hit, but quite often I'm going to be taking multiple hits, so what the hell. Kill off some of that stuff. I'll never rebuild it, but that's okay. Got some black shirts there too. I don't know where they want to go. They're pretty decent. Its reinforcement for the Allies is to remove the Selby Infantry Brigade. It might make sense if I had known it was gonna, if I knew it was gonna be removed, to take hits on it. This is why I don't like this permanent hits, removals, all kind of stuff like that. That's a unit that I was avoiding getting hurt because it's really a one-use unit. I can't recover it. But part of why it's one use is that it's going to get removed from the game anyway. So if I don't take a hit on it, I'm wasting a resource, or if I don't if I don't get it destroyed. I also don't know if it belongs in the removal box. Chances are it's not coming back, so I should just bag it. Try to keep, the stuff to a limited amount, but I keep finding myself when I can't find something, looking in the bags. Well, those bags are going to get kind of full if I'm throwing everything in them that I don't think is going to come back. So far, I haven't put anything in the bag accidentally, though. So I think I'm probably safe throwing this in. But the whole withdrawals and replacements and all that, it is just a fucking headache. And the fact that North Africa doesn't have a whole hell of a lot of units for an OCS game, I mean, it has a lot of counters, but it has, well, DAK has a lot of counters, but it has a lot of counters because of all this shit. The fact that it doesn't have a whole hell of a lot of units makes this almost plausible, but it's still too much of a fucking nightmare. And I don't know why they're making this much effort on this when there's probably as much screwing around and replacement and whatnot when you get to those big East Front games. But they just, like, everybody's so into the history of the North Africa campaign that, like, you know, and also there's enough information about it, especially on the British side, about units being withdrawn and whatnot, that the same kind of shit on the Soviet side, especially, wasn't available. So it's like, well, yeah, this is what was there according to what information we have, and we just leave that unit the same throughout, even though technically it probably changed a lot. You know, it's like, I don't know. There's this, the nitpicking people who, if they can find something that's, you know, historically they think that it could be done a little bit more accurately, are like, well, shouldn't that be a better unit at that point, or shouldn't that? And it's just like, come on, dudes. To some extent, especially for me, where I don't give a shit about that stuff at all. I really don't, right? There are certain elements of realism that I very much care about. For example, the realism of the system, which I actually feel like there's too many special rules in DAK to be able to judge the system as a whole based on how DAK works. That may be true with every fucking OCS game. I know that Burma had enough special rules going on and shit going on that, like, you know, you're basically putting the scripting type elements in to make the game work the way it should. And, you know, it could just be that's necessary for operational level stuff, and that, yeah, it's a good enough system, and that's fine, you know. But what it means is that you don't have the kind of generosity, is I think how I would pronounce it, that you might get out of something like the CWB or NBS series, where you expect the system to work well under any conditions. The things that it doesn't get right aren't really system-based stuff. But here there's system-based stuff that they're fucking around with. For example, roads instead of railways for trace supply. Whoa, you know, but it's like technically what they're doing is they're abstracting some trucks and saying that they're working on this. If you had a small enough force, you probably would have more trucks available for, you know, your on-map operations. But if you want to look at things really carefully, rail cap should be impacted by the supplies that you're using on trace supply and how far they're going and all kind of stuff like that. So, I mean, there's a lot of hand-wavy shit going on in the OCS to make that supply system playable in a way that, like, maybe Campaign North Africa doesn't do, as one example of an absolute, you know, let's take this to the nightmare level or whatever. Someday I have to get to Rommel and Tunisia on the board. It is not Campaign North Africa, but it has a much, much more detailed air system, one that I believe is an improvement over Campaign North Africa's, from what I've heard. And overall, it's just very, very nicely detailed. Less emphasis on supply, though. I'm trying to get out with this Selby unit, though, that I'm going to remove from the game. And in my shorthand sort of way, thought that I had, but realized, yeah, I don't spell things out very often. I just kind of gloss over, you know, I bury the lead, as it were, is that my play, for optimal play, I would be doing things differently based on my knowledge of that withdrawals and replacement system. I had the same problem with Desert Fox, where I'm like, oh, I could optimize things if I knew units weren't coming back get them wrecked or not destroyed, but beat up to a certain level. Just shit like that, that it's like, to play the game as well as you possibly can, you have to know the withdrawals and replacement schedule, and you have to game it in a way that like just doesn't seem historically accurate. Whereas what probably actually happened was beat up units got withdrawn and incorporated into other units or rebuilt or something like that. It wasn't a matter of, I picked the exact right unit, clever me, that was going to get hurt. There are enough units on here that it's not that simple, and I just really wish that the withdrawals and replacements were handled in a different sort of way. Desert Fox kind of handles it in a different way with the armored. I think it's the armored stuff. With some of the stuff, you're allowed to substitute other units where you like can go look for the damaged unit and move it in for that to be the unit that's being refitted and everything, which actually takes less of your combat power away. But that's kind of a nightmare as well, but at least it doesn't impact your play in a bad way. But some of the units are absolutely have to be matched. And again, it's just an obnoxious mechanism. What I'd rather get, given the amount of flexibility that some of the commands actually had, was something that de-emphasized actual units. So games that tend to do that tend to be very simple, right? Like they're like, oh, you have so many strength points, and they feel kind of like Axis and Allies. That's not really what I want. I want something that's detailed enough that covers important salient aspects of the campaign, like supply properly and well, the way I think OCS tries to do, at least. It may have its iffy points, but it doesn't focus on this unit historically did this well because of X, Y, and Z. I would actually rather, kind of like the leader systems that I babbled about back when I did Victory Game Civil War. Now I have to like specify Victory Game Civil War. Well, I've got a lot of games called Civil War, but to make it, you know, distinguished from the GMT semi-clone of it. But I don't mind things having historical names and whatnot. I just feel like their ratings and values should be determined by the campaign itself rather than by some sort of fixed valuation. And that's for leaders and whatnot, because that matches more the command problems that the overall, you know, theater or strategic command had with choosing which leaders to put where. They really couldn't tell who was good and who wasn't. They might have hints towards it. Same kind of thing could go with the units, where you could still have named units, but their valuation would actually become more apparent as through play. Of course, that requires an obnoxious level of record keeping, and I actually don't think it's worth it in the same way that I think the leaders in Civil War are. But if you wanted that level of detail, I don't really feel like you should just know that the 7th Armored is going to kick ass early in the game or something like that. I don't know. I guess it's just my predilection for general systemic rules to handle and allow capabilities to be emergent based on that, rather than, let's string a bunch of buzzwords together somehow, but it's what I feel like I have to do to express the point. Rather than to kind of script the game by saying this unit was good at these points and not at these. I want to investigate the why. If you're going to go into detail that it was good at particular points and not at others, have the game reveal why you think it was good at one point and not the others. And, you know, the wearing out of the 7th Armored is a perfect example. The fact that I haven't used them very heavily probably should mean that they don't degrade as badly. The fact that they fucked up probably means that they should degrade more quickly. So I'm probably breaking even here, but if I had just not used them, they might have still been a kick-ass unit for a little while, right? And that's what the mechanisms should express, rather than, oh look, they become better on date X or date Y or whatever. Now, some of it's kind of baked into the get them killed and you get replacements that aren't as good. Key to that is it's not a reproducible thing. It's a scripted piece, right? Let's say they get killed and they did horribly, you would actually assume that they would be a worse unit than they historically were. And I just feel like the system should account for all kinds of stuff like that if you're going to go into that kind of detail. Like, I'm not interested in give me the storybook exposition. I'm interested in give me the rationales behind it within the game so that I can play those and so that I can see them emerge from usage. I've shifted around my British supplies to what extent I could. 7th Armored failed to get its truck filled up, but that's okay, because I just don't have the fuel resources to move this thing into place and launch an attack with it. Good as it may be, I just can't afford to do it. It's, you know, it's motorized stuff. Motorized stuff, unlike in Desert Fox, where fueling is just a matter of, hey, do you have your supply network built? Honestly, both fueling and ammo are that way. If you get a resilient enough network, you don't end up using up supplies. So if you have a powerful enough supply network, you're able to supply everything and it's fine. But if you can't trace enough through, if you don't have enough depth of trucks and dumps and whatnot, you end up actually starting to eat supplies off the map and eat your supply units, which is this very painful decision. And it's very interesting game-wise. It doesn't feel as visceral as moving the supplies does in OCS. But anyway, I'm left with, you know, a few brigades up here, which I don't know if I really want to have up there, some artillery and whatnot. I don't know if I actually want to attack. Now, the Italians have to act as if I am going to attack, and therefore they will bomb or use their artillery. Since I have a reserve marker here, I may actually hold off on using my planes because I'm starting to take some flak hits, and the Italian Air Force is starting to get beaten up in ways that I don't like. Airplanes, I feel, are the most valuable thing in the campaign, and I think that's where my equipment replacements are going to go, rather than to armored units and motorized units and such, which doesn't feel like, sure, the airplanes had to be refitted and everything, but like, I don't have any equipment replacements yet. And where I want to put them is I want to put them into getting my planes up there. Whether it's fighters or bombers, it doesn't matter. They're both vitally important towards keeping the air power component going. Artillery obviously is just garbage in this game. Like, you have in every fucking OCS game, you have way too much artillery for the amount of ammo that you can supply through it. The only issue with it is if you split your artillery up, you may have reasonable amounts of it that, like, they give you options as to where you want to throw your materials. But I just don't know if I have enough to make the attack here. But again, the Italians have to respond because the Brits are in contact. If I can disorder them, I can almost certainly put off their hit. And despite what I said, the Italians used their airplanes because I just can't see draining supplies. I'm going to need them for the German counterattack. Having Tobruk already held and with that huge dump in it, man, that's going to make the German advance easy, right? Got lucky enough, or whatever. Not really. I rolled a 6, right? I'm over 1, 2, 3. I'm over here on this table. Only on a 2 would I fail to disorder them. But I got a result, and the Brits are like, yeah, we're not going to expend all kind of effort for an iffy attack against a hedgehog, which I think means this turn is done. And as is often the case, I get very little done and feel like, I don't know, this Italian position is just too strong, right? Like, but I don't know that it's that much stronger than it would have been. Like, I don't know that the supplies made much effect on that. I just managed to not be able to attack as much as I wanted to. Things like 7th Armor weren't able to charge forward, etc. But this was fairly well developed pretty early. The Italians can throw a lot of shit into that Tobruk-Bardia area. And like I said, I think I might be able to get Bardia. I'm not going to get Tobruk. Is it worth it? You know, should the Brits say, screw it, you know, Tobruk is this nasty fortress when it comes to the historical situation, but I'm not going to get anything like that. Even if I get Bardia, I'm not going to get anything like that. Should I just say, screw it, and fall back and, you know, say, you know what, the Italians didn't do too badly when it comes down to it. Some of that, a lot of that, having to do with the lack of supplies. Somebody suggested, hey, I would just start over with the Rommel enters scenario. Yeah, I'm not that interested in playing the historical. I'm interested in playing the continuation of what I've already started. So for me, this is more interesting than starting at a historical point. Starting at another historical point, not interesting at all to me. The what if that I've developed accidentally, it's okay. It's not what I would have favored. But yeah, I feel completely handcuffed right now in the sense that I don't think the Brits are going to do a damn thing. So we will, I guess, end the turn there and push forward. Do I have time for another turn? Maybe after a little bit of a rest. It is Friday, which means maybe I want to take a nap or something, because like yesterday, I got up, you know, around noonish or whatever, which is not, you know, not as much sleep as I often have. Part of the thing is, from, I guess, 4 p.m. here until 4 a.m., I'm either playing Raid or I'm dancing. And then I get back and I have to play Raid when I get back, and I keep passing out from that. Like, as soon as I get home, and wasting resources that I have in that game. And I don't know, I can afford to, but it's like, I also am in the midst of an event that, like, I would like to do as well as I could, and wasting resources and time is not a great action. Right, no nap, let's just squeeze another turn out. Random events, weather, nothing happened. Italians still got initiative going first. I feel pretty comfortable, to tell you the truth. As I cheated, these artillery, they were not allowed to walk their way through. They had to have fuel. So we're going to pull all of these artillery out of the reinforcement pool. I started thinking, hey, I got an artillery heading down, I'll walk them down like this guy. Yeah, it doesn't work that way. If they have a motorized version, they have to use that. And that means I have to spend fuel from Tripoli, which I didn't do. And then I also have to spend fuel from here. So if and when I need that artillery, I'll be shipping it. Found a couple more that were just making their way into the Tobruk area, which also could not have done that. Now, okay. I could have walked once I got on the map, but I wasn't allowed to walk here. And that's the big difference. And I would not have been spending all the fuel resources. It's a token per unit. I just don't need the artillery that badly. I rolled for the Greek campaign last turn, and I shouldn't have. C5 is up here. I'm not going to roll this turn. And 2 New Zealand is actually activated now, which is more troops I can use. They're really just meat right now because their quality is just a 3, same as the 6 Australians. I'm taking most of the hits on the Indians and the independent units because of that. Well, the way I feel stymied with the Brits leads me to questions. Hey, what about pushing the 7th Armored, around to try to come from behind, whatever? But I only have 1 headquarters. And that's a problem. Now, right now, he's at the extent of where he can pull from Mersa Matruh. Mersa Matruh isn't all that important. It only pulls in 1 token at a time per turn. So I don't really have to make that my big dump or whatever. I have more supplies up here at Buck. So conceivably, I could trace out of Sidi Barani, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, be settled here, and that would get me supplies to the front here and be able to push the 7th Armored forward. And I think that's what I have to do. It's not pleasant, but I do think I need to make that threat to the side of Bardia, because I'm not going to just be able to bash through here unless I get really lucky, So, yeah, and I may need to send some artillery around to help the 7th Armored, just in case they actually face resistance. Right now there isn't much, but the Italians could well reposition their units to defend Bardia better. And again, the Brits are stymied, decide not to expend supplies. I've thrown quite a bit into play as far forward as I can, for what that's worth. Starting to... This is my biggest supply point, right? So I'm trying to schlep as much of that forward as I can, but also trying to pull from Mersa Matruh forward. I just don't feel like I can get purchase here. Bombardment is very, very effective. And because the Italians got air superiority, they're not expending tons of supply. They don't have a lot of coastal transport capabilities right now. So I kind of don't want to break into my supply pools while that situation exists. Especially since, hey, I got Rommel coming in next turn, right? Sure, he's coming in Sicily, right? He's gonna have to push in. Oh, actually, it should be here. Is actually, it's gonna take some effort to get him on the board and starting to move, but as long as I can bottle the Brits up, I'm in great shape. Now there is a threat. 7th Armored is moving into position where I'm gonna have to do something about that. Might even fuel up the artillery that I'm sending this way. Sent a little motorized unit or armored car unit there to help defend the headquarters. how big a deal is it? You know, I'm not expecting a raid here. It's possible this truck and artillery could be fucked up by such a thing, but it just doesn't feel like this is the kind of balancing act that I don't know if I'm doing the right thing or not. Like, you know, I could spend another fuel to get this guy up there and protect that truck and that artillery, but the Italians might just fail against the artillery. It's not very high quality. And that is actually visible to the opponent. Like, you know, shit in the back areas that nobody's scouting out or whatever is perfectly visible to see one unit. So small forces are very, very visible. Large forces you know very little about. You know one unit in that large force. I just feel like the sort of fog of war rules that OCS uses are not appropriate, right? I feel like I should have a pretty good idea of what kind of odds I'm facing when I'm attacking a hex, when I'm right adjacent to it and I have like capable artillery spotters and everything. And I feel like I should probably know almost nothing about the stuff back here. But that's not the way the system works. And you know, there's these little picayune things, but they add up. So the fact that, yeah, the Italians could just run down and attack that. But in my head, I can't tell whether or not that's worth doing, right? Sure, it might disrupt the British advance, but not that much. And I'm probably not going to get that truck away, right? I capture it, it gets recaptured. It just ends up this kind of mess that I don't want to even cope with. So that kind of makes up for the fact that, like, there's stuff that I probably wouldn't have very good info on. But again, I just shouldn't have the intel on stuff back here. But I should have a fair idea of what's here. I think the one counter roll is reasonable for this. I think here, we should have a pretty goddamn good idea of what the odds of the fight are going to be. And we don't. The fact that I got the disorder in, well, the order doesn't really matter. I was going to say, look, in my reaction phase, barrage segment, I was able to bomb that. But if I had failed, only a 1 in 36 chance, but if I had failed, I would not get the opportunity to pull my reserves into play because of that. And that's kind of, I mean, it's believable and everything. It's just, it puts you in a hard position where you're like, geez, I don't know if I need my reserves. I feel pretty comfortable if I can keep bombing this to disordered, and I have almost an absolute certainty of doing so. Of course, chance comes into everything, but it kind of feels like, hey, I've put these things in reserve, but I know I'm not going to use them. Actually, the one set is a bunch of artillery, which I wouldn't get a chance to use anyway. If my barrage fails with the planes, my artillery's not gonna get a second chance. I don't know how I feel about all of it. I like the detail that the supply gets into. I don't feel like the system is solid enough across the board to justify maybe everything that's going on. I just don't know. I really don't know. It's like, yeah, it would have to be a lot more abstract to clean away the kind of niggly problems that I have. And then I don't want a lot more abstract. I'd rather, you know, the audacious attempt at covering things in more detail that the system does, even if it ends up cropping up more inconsistencies and more little problems that I'm kind of like, yeah, I'm not sure how I feel about this. But anyway, that lets us get rid of the disordered marker on the Brits. They took a loss too. You don't really want to be in contact with the enemy if you're not going to do shit. But I intend to do shit. I intend in the combat phase to drop my artillery and to launch an attack, but as long as I keep getting disordered, I can't afford to do it. I just can't afford to launch the attack. Does that feel reasonable? Or it feels to me like I'm making a decision that is inappropriate here. Like the decision to attack is made, the attack gets disrupted, but it still goes forward. But no, I have a chance to call it off, and I keep doing that because I'm incredibly cautious, but also I do not want to use up the supplies that I have. That's a very limited amount. I can't make many attacks until I get away with an attack. Well, I pretty much know that I will not get away with an attack unless I shoot down some of these planes with my flak. That's a 1 in 12 chance on each plane, each time they attack. I really need to hit the big guy, the 6-point plane. The 4-point would just take a couple points off. The 2-point would take a couple points off. I don't remember what I'm at. I'm at like 12, which puts me on this column. It would drop me a column, but I'm running up here. It's probably not going to make much difference. In fact, the Italians could probably use a lot less air power or small artillery fire, right? Like they could be firing 2 tokens of artillery each time, which would cost about the same as the planes do. So don't think the planes are just purely better, right? I might want to be using artillery instead because I still have to recover the planes. They're in 2 hexes. That means it's costing me 2 tokens to recover them. Here it is Sunday, relatively pretty day. Saturday was pretty as well. However, I was sleeping through all of it. I slept a lot. I'm still tired. That's okay. Unfortunately, my internet's down right now, which might be good news for playing because it means that I am almost forced to come here and fiddle about. The Italians shift their line here around Solomon Bardia. I don't know if it's good enough. The real question is, can the 7th Armored get supplies to launch an attack up into here or up against these air units? I may just need to move from the air units, but the problem there is then I won't have the artillery that I need to hold this line. So I guess I'm just going to risk things. I don't know. I'll look up, see what happens. I believe the air units get a free rebase. So the problem is the fighters can rebase for free, but I don't think normal air units can. But I think they get to fly away if they get attacked, but that kind of negates the purpose of not flying them away first. Special exemption is only for fighters. So if my air, and now the other thing I was supposed to look up was what happens if the airbase gets moved into, and I think it gets, I think I get free base transfer. I think I get a free base transfer if, well, I get to make a base transfer. So the thing is, as long as I leave these bombers available here, and these guys have to be within range, the 10 hexes, so even the fighters could get fucked with. I did rebase. This is no good. Shit. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I rebased 2 fighters here. I would have to build a base there. I built another base back here that I'm planning on rebasing too with my bombers, but I pulled out of this base, and that's going to cost me 2 additional tokens. I spent them, but I shipped them back in. Shit. I'm in a lot of trouble here. And it's that 7th Armored that is just threatening everything. I think I build the base here where I rebased. And I, again, hope for the best. Hope the 7th Armored can't do a lot of damage to me, but I think it's going to sweep in and cause a lot of issues. In addition to that, this is... I got to get that truck moving. I'm collecting up more supplies than I need to. But this is actually... Back in the random events phases when the Greek campaign roll should have been made, I got a 2 on that. That means we're going to have some withdrawals starting for the preparation for the Greek campaign, and I have to address those as well when the British turn takes place, which will throw another monkey wrench in this attempt to advance on Tobruk that has been delayed. And probably, you know, I mean, the question is, can I break up the Bardia line? Because it looks like Tobruk is out of reach. And since I pulled the last unit, I had the Ariete divisional marker, which I put on the board to wherever it's gathering, but by airlift. Since I pulled the last unit out of the old box as part of my shipping, all these move down into place. But now we have to worry about the Brits, including what the hell's up with those withdrawals. It's still down, unfortunately, which is kind of shitty. I did the 2 units that I'm supposed to withdraw. A brigade from the 2nd New Zealand, fine, no problem with that. Those were reinforcements I was hoping for, but, you know, they're going to take a while to get to the front. But the other had to be an armored brigade. I don't have armored brigades except for in the 2nd Armored. That's the unit that's recommended anyway. They give the historical. I think you're allowed to substitute. But, yes, I have 4 turns to get it to a port, but I gassed it up and moved it in there, even though I really, really want it up here, because it's just too much of a pain in the ass to keep track of withdrawals over a course of turns, and I can't cope with it. I just have to get them to a port and then shift away. Now, I did those out of order because, again, I want to just make sure that I get them off the map. Yeah, this is a minor, this is definitely a hit to the 7th Armor's position there. There's not that much that's 7th Armored, actually. That's not part of it. This is part of the 2nd Armored, which is the unit that got withdrawn. It helps a little. I have these fuel markers. I'm going to put one here to indicate I spent a fuel to fill up one of these units. I don't know which one. I may actually do this shitty armor. This thing is so fucked up. It's very, very slow, but takes gas. But then it has a reasonable movement side. And I could actually shoot that through, hit the air units, and come back to wherever I want to be in order to launch some sort of attack, which may well be on these artillery or something along that line. I'm hoping to degrade that entire Bardia area really, really quickly. But it could be real chancy. One of the problems that I'm going to have is I probably need to garrison this space. Yeah. If I garrison this space, I can draw supplies from my base back there for any kind of attack coming in on the Bardia sailor there. I don't know if I could have just thrown some of these reserves in place of that to New Zealand. I certainly couldn't replace the 2nd Armored, which is the one I'm actually worried about, so screw it. Another interesting piece that's sitting here, I've seen a couple of these. Oh look, it's cavalry. It has normal movement and it's motorized on its movement side. It has normal foot movement for infantry. I don't know what the hell these things are. I think it's probably designated as a cavalry regiment, but like, it's just got trucks, you know, and it's basically nothing more than a motorized infantry. I have no idea what these things are meant to represent in some cases. I'll just trust them as to what the factors are supposed to be. So this fuel marker allowed me to fuel up a unit without moving it, and then move back and forth and get my truck still filled so that it can support an attack. How much that's important, I don't know, because honestly, I might as well be back here in order to be supported by that unit. Doing things like moving these armored cars around. I moved one from back here up to here. That used fuel from Mersa Matruh, but I moved the one from the headquarters up to here to cover my supply route cutting through that I'm going to need. They don't serve a hell of a lot of purpose otherwise. You know, they require the same supplies as anything else to fight. They require fueling to move because they're fully motorized, and they're just not worth using for anything else, but they work really, really well as these little garrison units that you can shift around, because they also they're not taking away from your offensive capability. Of course, they're vulnerable. They were not strong. So in a series of overruns, first of all, 7th Armored took out the airfields, chased the planes back. That means no air support for the Italians this turn. Also plowed in, knocked out the artillery here, hit this. It was a hedgehog, I didn't realize it was. Oops. That is known information, but it's like, yeah, but if you don't ask or whatever, or you don't think about it, and you hit it, it could be bad. Anyway, ended up losing the 3rd Hussies there, and that's kind of important because that frees up now a build for 7th Armored. And it's not a bad unit. I mean, you know, it's good British armor. It's just, it's not the equivalent to the stuff that it's replacing. And advancing my artillery, again, may be at risk. This all may be at risk, but it may not be as well. It may be that the Italians have to give up ground. So that's what we're doing there. I may end up trying for an overrun here as well. I have enough movement points to make a single overrun, and then I can still do a follow-up attack. But I may be better off, in fact, I'm almost certain I'm better off hitting them with the artillery first. I could actually even bomb them before I hit them with the artillery, because, wait, maybe I can't. Yeah, I can. Yeah. The attacker has the advantage of being able to try both. So I could actually bomb them after any opportunities, because I have no hip shot capability, after any opportunities to overrun. Which is probably what I'm going to do. Now we're in a kind of an interesting situation. The air unit managed to disorder the Italian stack. During the Italian phase, in the reserve segment, or reaction, they released one unit as a reserve, fueled it and sent it in there. The stack, the units that are disordered are still half, but the important thing is I've put a unit that has a high, relatively, quality in play, which isn't going to have the -1 from the disorder. Now, if I want the full effect of the disordering, I still have the opportunity here in my combat phase to do a barrage first and then hit them. And I don't know. Like, quality is really, really important. And 3 is, I would be able to reduce their quality. Basically, there's a hedgehog there. So 3 would be what I would be facing anyway, which would give me a +1. I think it's worth bombing it. That's a really thick stack there. So I might get a kill as well, which probably just makes things better. So I think I'm going to throw in a light barrage. I'm not going to use up a lot of ammo though, because I know already that I'm getting a 3-column shift because of the hedgehog in my favor. And even with the disorder, there's so many Italians here that I basically got myself a 1-to-1. Geez, I wonder if I have too many there. There are stacking limits in this game. You don't usually reach them, but with Italian divisions in play. Now, they're all weakened divisions. I'm going to have to count and make sure. Yeah, but I was getting awfully close. Anyway, we ended up with just a 1-to-1 odds out of the attack, but we got a surprise, which was a huge bonus because we got a 6 on the surprise die roll. That converts things so significantly. Then, of course, we got a crappy combat roll, so it actually kind of worked out. The smooth combat chart in this system is one of the things that I really, really like. And add to that increase the variability of the system with the surprise rolls. Quality comes into play and whatnot, but it's also like, you know, I guess one of the things that I really like is that you can't really calculate what the hell is going to happen. You have no assurance. You know, you could hit with really good odds and get a crappy surprise roll and a crappy attack roll and end up really, really blasted away. But again, it's rather smooth, so blasted away isn't that, it isn't like an attacker eliminated type result, right? It's, on the bad end, it's an attacker loses too. You give up the fight, you know, you start attritioning yourself and you're like, yeah, let's call it off. And on the very good end, you know, the worst is a defender lose 2 and other stuff. Of course, you get the exploit result, so then that means you get follow-up attacks potentially on them. I don't know if the Brits did the right thing here, especially getting themselves stuck in there. Those aren't in supply anymore. Did I fuck myself? Do I have an out of supply marker? Yeah, because I moved into that space. Oh, that ain't good. That ain't good at all. Oops. That means I have an attrition check that I didn't do yet, that I got to do in the supply phase. Clear myself of that problem. I'm going to allow this attack to stand because I don't think that went well for me. But I'm going to have pulled them back instead. This couldn't have happened within the confines of the game, but I also would not have continued the attacks against the unit that I hit up there. Still not sure that this is good, but at least I'm in trace supply now. Yeah, the reason I wouldn't have been before is I had no garrison here or here, because otherwise I could use all these roads back here, because they're not defended. But we'll leave it at that. That pushes us into the next turn, and Rommel comes on. My internet's been on and off. Ever since they did this upgrade, I don't know, to 5G or whatever, I don't know what they did. They did an upgrade for phones in my neighborhood. It has been iffy. Like, my internet was pretty good before that. All right, anyway, let's push on to another turn while I cook some food. Or whether the Italians win the initiative, which they kind of have to take, because they've got disordered units, they've got planes that need to recover, all kind of stuff like that. to prevent the Brits from getting a double turn, which could be to their advantage, no question. I will not have to roll the Greek die roll again until after I pass the automatic that's here, and then we start rolling again. So the timing of the Greek campaign does not really impact things. This will move forward. I'll move it halfway, but I'll finish that movement when it's the Brits' turn, just to remind me. Anyway, just trying to point out, these little things that I have to do to make the game workable for me. There's just so much information in a game of this size. And, I had the same kind of issues with the Central Front series where I had to continuously try to remember shit. This is a little easier, I guess. I don't know. So, German reinforcements down here. Italians rebuilt a machine gun. That better be a battalion. Yeah. Back there, they actually ended up building that air base they had before to give room for some of the German planes to come in. And that's really about it. There's not a whole hell of a lot for me to do. I'm trying to figure out what to do about this, but I can't think of anything too useful. Sure, they could knock out they could drive my other two planes away, but that's the same as me moving them, so fuck it. I feel like Tobruk is pretty safe right now, so I'm starting to ship some of the forces from Tobruk into the Bardia salient, seeing if I can hold that far. Meanwhile, in terms of the Panzer Army Africa, all I've done is brought a couple of, these trucks, I think they were part of Ariete. So I haven't really brought any German units on yet, simply because, although I could, they're here, but I want to shift supplies more and more. I want to make sure what's up here is capable of defending what it's got. And then we swing the forces into play. That's going to leave it to the Brits' turn. I do not think I want to do that right now until I deal with my food, because it does make things more complicated. Able to come up with a great argument for using the 7th Armored and battering it against any of this stuff. Yeah, I could gas it up and hit those planes, and that would probably do me some good. But the Italians have so many planes, I have no fighters. I can't stop them from disordering me if they wish to. So, oops, I forgot to roll. I disordered their planes, but maybe not. That would have been a shift. Yeah, I'm in the same position. Okay. I did disorder their stack using my own air power. However, as I just checked, I lost a plane in doing so, or part of my squadron, which means that's going to run down. Might make more sense to hold off and use artillery just because, there's more of a surprise factor, and I'm not necessarily risking anything. If the Italians, as they likely will, hit this successfully, then I can not spend supplies, I guess. I don't see much hope of me getting even Solom, to tell you the truth. I just don't have the amount of troops to batter through what's in my way. And going around, well, I need a fair amount to protect the main road, no matter what. So yeah, I could probably commit a couple of infantry up this way and threaten from the north. But it's a long, slow slog if I don't use motorized movement. And it's just very, very hard for me to expend resources on something that probably isn't going to make much difference to me. Okay, so Brits are disordered as well, and at this point I ought to be considering instead how I can defend, say, the Sidi al-Barani line again MRSA Matrua, stuff like that, and make the Axis pay for taking them. I just don't think I can bash my way through. Although I am getting some planes, that will help. And my headquarters are going to start swapping in and out like mad cows or something, just wandering about with no reason. So I don't know what's up with that or why. It feels like that fetishizing which units were actually where at any given time, which, you know, once you commit to using named units in any game, it becomes a facet to it. Now, to me, my imagination doesn't go to, oh, it's the this, particularly heavily. Although I do like to recognize, you know, hey, this unit's doing great. You know, like at Gettysburg, you want the first of the first of the first to be up there. You know, whatever, right? And I can understand that same kind of cheering on individual units in the same sort of way. The problem is, if you go into too much detail of what the units actually have, among other things, you might be getting rid of some opportunities. One thing you're getting rid of is the opportunity for units to improve over the course of campaign, not by some historical schedule, but because of what they do, right? And I kind of like that kind of concept in games. Maybe it doesn't apply too much to the operational. I don't know. It certainly doesn't to tactical stuff, but anyway. There's just not time. You know, if anything, units are just going to dissolve, and that's handled by normal morale rules. But yeah, I'm babbling about shit that doesn't matter, am I not? All right, I moved the counter forward. I moved that forward. It is, I got about a half hour before I have to start doing raid again, or more or less. I got more light than that. I may try to squeeze another turn in, but I need a break right now, right? Even though not much happened, that's just the nature of how I play games, is that, yeah, I need a break. So I go watch a video for 20 minutes or so. It's raid time, but maybe I come back and push out another turn. So far, not much of excitement has happened, right? Now, part of that is because the Brits didn't have enough supply, but from what I hear about the game, it's pretty hard to take Tobruk with the Brits. And so I can't be too unhappy about the fact that I didn't even get to Bardia because of my supply fuck-up. So, you know, we'll live with it, right? We'll live with it. You hear me have these sniffles. I get these everlasting colds, and I knew it would be the case. Every time I get a bad fever, my cold lasts for a long time. Like, it's probably chronic bronchitis or something like that. But it's like, it always tricks me because it feels like right after the fever, hey, I'm getting well, and I don't have sniffles, and I don't have a cough, that's great, and then, damn it, this kind of shit happens. It isn't really impacting my life at all, except that I run through a lot more toilet paper blowing my nose than I should. No weather, no events. The Italians still got the initiative roll, so they're going to keep going first. And let's move this halfway just because. It took a little bit of time to watch a video in downtime, whatever. It is raid time now, but fuck that for a while. But I managed to watch, it's supposed to turn ugly for the rest of the week, which sucks. Because I'm low on food and have wood to cut and all kind of stuff like that. But I ended up watching a video on the British Home Guard. during the war. And I guess the most interesting thing to me were some of the not really improvised, but not really up-to-date weaponry that they were equipped with. And some of it was like innovations that could get around the fact that, like, you know, they couldn't really mass produce anything decent for them. It was just kind of amusing. Pushing the Germans forward. I moved the Trento division into Tripoli so it can start walking. I'm airlifting Italian forces into play. I don't feel like the Germans... so one of the problems with them is they need fuel. And I do not feel capable of launching a major attack at this point. I do feel capable of defending what I'm holding in both Bardia and in Tobruk against the Brits. And so, yeah, I'm just more or less sitting here. And the game is going nowhere. I think the Brits are going to have to fall back. I don't think they can keep launching attacks. The Italian the fighters have moved back into range to help defend Solem. I think this is a lost cause to keep trying to batter my way through that line. I can cause attritional losses with air power, and I am getting more planes this turn, so maybe. But I think I'm probably better off trying to set things up so that I stop the Italians from advancing, at least until the Germans get up there. I'm left with the feeling again, I don't know if I just don't get the game or if, you know, if the fuck-ups that I made are so severe that they cause this kind of situation. But yeah, it feels like the Italian army is too tough to take on. It really does. Even if I had the supplies, I have this worry that I would have just battered the Brits down pretty hard. Maybe have gotten Bardia or whatever. I don't think I'd get close to Tobruk. I'm just thinking about the expenditures of supply that I would have to make to bust through this shit that I'm hitting. And on top of that, the losses I would take with it. Some Italians would still be left and would fall back to Tobruk. So yeah, I don't know where I am here, but I feel once again that fear that I'm just incompetent, because now I'm looking at the Italians and I'm like, well, yeah, okay, they were good on defense, but I don't really know that they can plow their way through those Brits either. And I look at the Germans, and there ain't many. There just is not a hell of a lot there that is going to help me. You know, it's not like when I look at the values in Desert Fox, and maybe I felt just as sort of handcuffed in that the first time I faced it. But when I look at the values there, I understand that I can sweep the enemy from the field with the Germans as they come flying on. Here I look, and not just the Germans, some good Italian units as well, but here I look at the strength points and I'm like, yeah, I don't know, there's a lot of good Brits left. Maybe because they didn't wear themselves out destroying the Italians, but we're getting something very, very different than what one would expect from the Desert Campaign. Let's just put it that way. You know, I think I have enough light I can play at night, especially when there's not a lot going on. Sure, there's a lot of glare off the board, but what kind of... So I played my Leipzig game at night at times, and I didn't have a problem with that. Now, that was all nice matte finish. Central Front series I found I couldn't do because I couldn't read the counters. with my shitty eyes and the iffy lighting. But I think we can go with this. By the way, I'm watching, I think I'm doing this just to avoid reading Gloomhaven's final few rules and going down and giving it another crack. But trying to pick up from where I was. I could probably start from the beginning. But I'm wasting time now by watching kind of a YouTube series on the making of Apocalypse Now. And it is really interesting shit. There's just so much online to watch. All right, let's get started. Okay, no weather, no events. The Italians got initiative yet again. And this time, let's make the Brits go first. There's no reason not to. Once they call off their attack, we're no longer under pressure. Everything's cycled fine, so we can let them go first. And here on the Greek side of things, we got an issue. 1 infantry brigade, 1 infantry battalion from 2 New Zealand, 1 infantry brigade from 6 Australian. I found the 2 brigades. I honestly don't know that there's an infantry battalion from the 2 New Zealand in the game yet. And I've been looking around and can't seem to find it, so I don't know. I don't know if I have an infantry battalion. Maybe I'm misreading this. Let's go in with the camera and see if we can see a little better. Yeah, that doesn't really help. So I'll keep looking. So far I've found things all the time, but it's painful. Looking through the counter, through the reinforcements and setup, I cannot find any 2 New Zealand infantry battalion. I can find infantry battalions. There's an independent one and one with 7th Armored that I can pull out. I think they're both like do not replace units, but it's okay to withdraw them. They'll just come back again when the Greek campaign is over. And we see the Brits have fallen back a bit. The Italians have to make a decision. Do I want to take Buck, which will fuck the extra supplies I could get there, or do I want to delay? You know, Buck fell somewhere in this area a month ago, which means I would have to delay an entire month. But on the other hand, bonus supplies are worth a lot, and if I'm not able to push the Brits backward to any significant effect, it's probably just not worth it. It's a little tough, especially over here as I start to deal with the Italians. Over here, the Brits, you know, a light in the center got me enough. I don't really have to worry too much about the darkness over there. But over here, there's a lot I have to read, a lot I have to pay attention to. So I'm finding I'm having to shift the lights. Now, it's not a big deal in most games, but in this one, I feel like I'm doing so little, like, and everything is kind of interconnected. Like shipping goes over to there and stuff like that. So I have to pay attention to these things, and it's a little painful at the very least. And I think I'm gonna reverse my marker for who has overall initiative, for whatever that matters, to the axis, just to remind me. And this moves forward. The Italians have just inched forward a little bit, moving at infantry rate or slower. Meanwhile, I've actually released the Dutch Africa Corps, shipped that over, which gets me less resources this turn than I've been getting, but I'm starting to pile up supplies in Tripoli, just as I warned that I would. And, you know, that might mean that I need to, like, release the Fliegen Corps, or at least parts of it, to aid in the upcoming battle. Let's see, where's my Italian fighters? They're still here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They're still in range. I will want to shift them forward again, you know, as I move forward, just to keep them keep an umbrella over my troops. But yeah, you know, Italy resurgent, man. The lighting is an issue, but it's plausible to play. under this light, which may speed things up significantly for me. There are times when I will not want to cope with the lighting issue, though. Like if I have to start pawing through those units in the dark there, yeah, I can move the light over and get some. But I'm just, there's a lot that I have to do with these two lights. Yes, I could bring more lights, yes. I know. I don't want to assemble the third light. I don't know why. I just have been negligent in that. Okay, so on the next turn, the Brits fall back to a line near Sidi Barani. Now this closes off this road. They built a hedgehog here. They're also using they also built one up in Sidi Al Barani, and the Italians had left some behind to protect that road that make it particularly, you know, a good defensive line at this point. Actually, this one may have been left by the Italians. I don't think so, though. I don't know. Maybe. Anyway, we're using those Italian defenses, fortifying the area more heavily. Buck can't defend Buck. I mean, we could have. We could have defended a line up here, but with the Italian defenses already in place, screw it. Let's build a line here. And this is what's interesting. It's not as good a defensive position as Tobruk with its anti-tank ditches and all, but it does a better job, this line, of sealing off the main road, or the primary up there, and then the secondary road coming through here. There's really no way through the desert without breaching this line. So we're not going to see something like what you've got here, which is essentially a bypass road that the Axis built around Tobruk. There's no opportunity to do something similar here. Technically, there probably would have been, you know. If this kind of situation ends up stopping the Axis, because I don't know how to conduct assaults in this game, you know, a bypass would be perfectly reasonable, and then that would force supplies only to come in off Sidi Barani, which is not sufficient. Tobruk has a major port and can pull in a lot of supplies. Granted, you can decrease those, but not that much. Even fully damaged in this particular game, it still pulls in 2 tokens. Whereas Sidi Barani only pulls in 1, Mersa Matruh only pulls in 1, but I've got my headquarters back here now within range where it can draw off of this huge dump that I can take here off the edge of the rail line. And that's a point of interest, therefore I can drop stuff off there. I can also garrison it at some point if I need to. Right now I don't need to, but any kind of attempt to skirt this can be dealt with. And that's, this may actually be a better defensive location with that combination of effects than Tobruk is, historically. Again, it's not as good in terms of sheer defensive quality, but in terms of cutting the map in two, it actually does a pretty damn good job. And we're seeing, you know, a different World War II in North Africa than we expected. Once again, the Italians got the initiative, forced the Brits to go first, but whatever. And nothing else of interest happened. We had to withdraw an anti-tank gun. And the Italians continue to creep forward. You know, not taking Buck, not yet. Couldn't have reached with the rate of advance, but I think we're going to ignore it, and it's just gonna flip over without us getting the supplies, because I do think we want the Italians to hit the Brits while they're a little weak right now. Rommel on his way, and otherwise we're just schlepping supplies around. I'm not shipping stuff to Tripoli. It doesn't feel terribly useful to me to put things that require gas there. I'm flying them in, you know, a unit or two at a time. It's got one token that's a regimental equivalent. That means a couple little battalions can come in. But yeah, that's what I'm doing. It's cheaper than the supplies that are showing up here. The problem is, I don't think I shipped any supplies. I have 3 tokens that I'm allowed to ship. I could actually ship a unit as well because of that. So I will be diverting some more stuff to Bardia, Solom, Tobruk, even perhaps, although I doubt that. But yeah, one thing I wanted to note is that so far this has netted me, now I need a 10 or higher to get anything. It's netted me 1 manpower, and that's it since it started, which was this month. But I have not been getting a lot of replacements. I've been building with what I can, get the best Italian units that I can back up, and on the line moving forward. I haven't really decided what to do. I have like an extra couple Italian headquarters here. I don't want to spend the fuel to move them. I guess I could move them on a truck. That doesn't spend fuel. That's neat. But it spends fuel in the sense that those are trucks that could run back to Tripoli and drive, which I'm doing as much as I can to try to get the materials together. You can see the materials I have in Tobruk and in Bardia. It's about equivalent to what the Brits had at the beginning of Compass. So I'm not really ready for a massive sustained assault in terms of supplies. I'm really upset because I had like 3 tokens here that I could move. Oh, there they are. And I lost them. So much. And, you know, the lighting again doesn't really help. We push into the last turn of the month because February is a short month and has 1 less turn. And that equalizes everything, I guess. I've been reflecting on my own about how little like armored warfare we're seeing here. Now, if I think about my other OCS experiences, Burma is not really armored warfare for the most part. You have some motorized units and whatnot taking place, and there are some tanks, but for the most part, it's an infantry engagement. Reluctant enemies, the terrain was very nasty, and I don't feel like it gave that sweeping sort of armored attacks. This should, but I'm not getting it. Now, you can make arguments why not. First of all, both sides are very low on supplies. The Brits should not have been as low as they were, but both sides have been very low on supplies, and that makes it much, much harder. Also, the Brits not having air superiority during Compass meant that they had to rely on artillery. When you have to rely on artillery to clear your way, and when you don't have things like hip shots and stuff, it is kind of painful. You know, I mean, I'm moving forward trying to expend as little as possible. It's not like I have to make a big sweeping move anywhere. It's not like it's even all that possible through here. I'm not going to have, you know, any kind of supply line or anything if I bypass the main roads cutting across here for either side. So where's the room for the armored breakthrough or anything like that? And you know, if I can save resources by not fueling up my armored units, it only makes sense, especially since everything else is almost, you know, well, at this point in the war is pretty much as good as the armored stuff for the most part. I'm not getting like, you know, that doubling and whatnot as being all that terribly valuable of the armored units. And then Also, what about, you know, one of the other things, the idea of breakthroughs and reserves being used and whatnot? Well, there's like enough forces for holding the line or smashing through at a point, but there's really not enough excess on either side at this point to take advantage of that with some sort of, in fact, you'll see I don't have reserves marked for the most part anywhere. Why? Because I have to move my units or they're on the front line. You know, it's not good to leave reserves on the front line. They get hammered that way. Of course, the sequence of play allows you to avoid getting hammered by removing the reserve marker during the reaction phase, assuming you don't get overrun. So it might work, but I've been kind of reticent to do that because, yeah, you know, I could get hit by a motorized attack or something like that. And I don't know. Anyway, going to start this one with the random events rolls and whatnot and see where we get. An event, a major Italian shipping something. Yeah, shipping what? The good stuff. Major Italian shipping success, which just gets rid of shipping losses. It halves them. Since the Italians won the initiative and are forcing the Brits to go first, I put that marker there to remind me they're unlikely to lose anything, and I can't bring in the Fliegen Corps at this point. It can only happen next turn at the beginning of the month. So. I've got more going on in Greece, more withdrawals. So this is beginning to annoy me. Here, an infantry brigade, a recon battalion, organic truck, 2 New Zealand division. What does that mean? Well, first of all, I think I'm out of brigades from them. I don't think they have a recon battalion on the board. And their organic truck, they have one. It has not come in yet. Where do I have it? Right there. I don't know what the hell, you know? This doesn't seem to align properly. I'm pretty sure they did not get their organic truck yet. They haven't been getting reinforcements. Maybe I'm missing something, but yeah, I really don't know what I'm gonna do. It might mean that I pull an organic truck off another division, you know, just because I don't want to take my normal trucks out, because the unassigned ones, because they're the inorganic trucks. Most trucks are inorganic. I mean, you know, you got your like wood paneled stuff, but anyway, I don't understand what's going on there. Obviously, it's not all to New Zealand. Maybe it's just one unit. If we look back at the last thing, though, yeah, it had 2 New Zealand after an infantry brigade and an infantry battalion. Well, they don't have an infantry battalion. Yeah, and I know, I'm pretty sure that there's flexibility as to what I can withdraw. And it has to be real units. I can't withdraw dead things. So at least that's what I think. But I think I'm going to have to look at the rules again and see if I can find something. Pretty damn sure they haven't gotten that organic truck yet, though. This is bothersome because, well, when do they get it then? You know, I've just been assuming it would be showing up at some point, but if it's already expected to be on the board, we got issues. Like, yeah, you have to get to penciling these in. There are a couple of changes here. This one is fine. On 1st of May 41, the 2RHA heavy, the 2RHA artillery battalion should convert into 2RHA artillery battalion yellow. Okay. That I have to pay attention to. And then on 1st of November, it's withdrawing the organic truck with the 2 listed infantry brigades. This is probably historical withdrawals. as opposed to something else, but I don't know, maybe not. But I don't see anything about this. And, you know, the thing I've been doing is running through the previous order of arrival, the setup, but there's a lot of game I have to look for to see if the 2 New Zealand truck shows up. And this is irritating. I don't know what could be done to make things easier. This is the kind of thing, if it's fucked up in the rules, it's just fucked up, and I don't know how you cope with it. The only reason I catch it is because, hey, I'm supposed to withdraw this. Well, why? How? What's up with that? You know? Is there some reinforcement I'm missing? There's nothing that comes in with events. Variable reinforcements are truly variable. What is the historical? The historical has to do with withdrawals and stuff, right? Yeah. So I don't really, the 2 New Zealand truck, May 41, but that might be a return because WD is withdraw. Let's see. This is what I had. It's a brigade. Supposedly the 28th Maori Infantry Battalion. Let me see what's up with that, because that may not be actually assigned to 2 New Zealand, and that may be the issue. So I looked for that amongst all my onboard stuff, including now I'm peeking around down here where it really can't be. We're back here. There's no 28th Maori on the board. And I would, with the historical withdrawals, that would be a withdrawal here. It's 5 New Zealand Infantry Brigade, 2 New Zealand Armored Cav Battalion. Okay, well that's different. That was not ordered to be withdrawn. It was supposed to be an infantry battalion. Like these are not matching what's on there. 6 New Zealand Brigade. Oh, here we go. 2 New Zealand Infantry Division, the 28th Infantry Brigade. Yeah. So on the 22nd, we're supposed to withdraw New Zealand Infantry Brigade and Armored Cavalry Battalion and the organic truck. That's what's supposed to come from here. What do we got here? Okay, we got the recon. Yeah, so presumably that'll be here, but I don't have these units on the board, and I have not been instructed to put them on the board. And this is reducing the British forces. I don't know what's going on. I'm going to look at the reinforcements and the setup yet again and see, did I miss something? Should these have come on? But I don't think so. Another careful combing through. I'm not finding these things. I feel like I'm penalizing the Brits because of mistakes that are in here or something. I don't know what's up there, but I feel like the specific units that are being historically withdrawn should be on the board by the time they're being historically withdrawn. I did not find them either in a scan through here. There's very little of the 2 New Zealand on the board, and coming on later in the reinforcements, very little comes in. And then there's the question of, well, okay, if these guys didn't make it on, how many other units on either or both sides are just like not in play and should be? I would have expected any errata to be in here, though. Place the infantry battalion with the Maori from my counter tray, and I pulled all of this turn's withdrawals again just out of the counter tray. I don't think that's how it's supposed to work. I will look here and see if there's something that says that that makes any sense. That these are like forces being with, you know, instead of being shipped to Egypt at all, they're just being withdrawn, you know, they're not being sent to Egypt, they're being sent to Greece right off, and thus triggered by the Greek box and the events in the Greek campaign. That's the only thing I can think of, but I don't remember there being anything like that in the rules. It's explained here. Advance the marker. As the marker advances, required troops must be withdrawn. You have 4 turns to get them to a port and move them to the Greeks box. If the called for units are unavailable due to loss or earlier withdrawal, substitute any unit of the same type, value, and trading status. Units can be full or reduced strength when withdrawn. When the Greek campaign execution begins, to execute that turn's withdrawals and remove the marker from the Greek deployment progress track. You'll have no additional units sent to Greece unless they're dragging their heels. Any further withdrawals never happen. And then eventually you hit termination and those units come back. And nothing about units not yet making it on the board. This seems like the fairest thing I can do, but again, it leaves me with this major question in my head of, hey, are there other units that I'm not catching? They're neither in the initial setup nor in the reinforcements track, so I don't know. But this seems like the only fair way to handle this that I can think of, because it is specific units being withdrawn. More annoying shit, this reflects the 3rd Hussey's light. I got here, replace 7th Armored Division 3rd Hussars light with a slightly worse version, but, and this is where they're really getting nitpicky as far as I'm concerned. The 3rd Hussars light was part of, let me find it, 7th Armored, was part of an upgrade or a replacement of the 3rd Hussars and 8th Hussars with an Armored Brigade number 7. So this unit is replacing something that's already been used. I've already lost it, and it's upgrade. You know, it's already been exchanged as part of a dual exchange. So there's some possibility you might have a slightly too good unit on the board for a little while. Again, man, that's getting annoyingly nitpicky. I only remembered it because I remembered the 3rd Hussies having been knocked out. Now I have to go back and try to deal with the rest of this. There's a removal of the Australian Corps, which means now the Brits have no headquarters whatsoever. Does that make sense? Not really. Not really. Oh, my defensive line just fell apart because I forgot about that. Well, the Brits are fucked. Because I was counting on them having their headquarters. Now, maybe they were supposed to have a headquarters that they don't have at this point. But remember, this just replaced the 13th Corps, which replaced the Western Desert Force. Now, the Western Desert Force isn't as good, but these two were equal to one another. This unit is gone. And I mean, sure, I could have planned for this, but now I've set up this fucking defensive line that I can't possibly hold. In fact, I can't possibly hold anywhere where I don't have a huge supply dump. I could hold near Marsa Matrua, but, you know, I've got, I built these up. Now, here I can, 1, 2, 3. I can defend but nowhere near as well as I could if I could have still had that headquarters there. But that headquarters is gone now. Great. The withdrawals and replacements and such not are just pissing me off to no end. But this one in particular is, you know, it's degraded my entire expectations. I had expectations of being able to hold this line. I don't think I can now. Okay, I found these guys. So like the 28th Maori, they're coming in a couple weeks. I don't know. I'm going with what I went with, having pulled them off. I probably should have pulled other units off instead, and 2 New Zealand would come in. 2 New Zealand has its issues because it's greener than other stuff that I had, but I'm done with that. Basically, I'm looking ahead in the advances here. Now, like this Coldstream Infantry Battalion, that was what I would have diverted instead of the Maori, and they would get removed, so they'd get pulled out of Greece forever, presumably. So I don't know, but I'm looking to see when I might get a headquarters, and I don't think I'm getting one next month. I don't think I'm getting one here. Now, I might be wrong, but I have no idea how you're supposed to hold Tobruk. You're supposed to have a Tobruk defense headquarters, and that doesn't seem to be showing up. No, do you really need it? Nah, because you can draw supplies directly from Tobruk as long as you're in that little cluster. But me holding this line, it's not going to be possible without some sort of command organization. And for some reason, the British have decided to disband the 13th Corps completely in the face of the enemy, replace it with an Australian headquarters, and then disband that for no apparent reason. I feel like this is bullshit, and that the Brits should have some capability to defend this line. So I'm giving them their headquarters. I mean, this may be the only way to explain the British collapse, to tell you the truth, but screw it, man. Give them some kind of command headquarters. Give them a way to throw supplies so that they can defend the line. And again, we're already in what-if territory. Let's what-if it a little bit more and say, let them keep, you know, some kind of officer corps that's willing to hold the line and not just gonna fall apart. If that just changes the entire story, if this entire game is based on the idea that the British basically just surrendered for no good reason, basically just withdrew as far as Alexandria for no good reason whatsoever, I feel like it's just not telling, it's not giving the reasons, right? It's scripting, and I don't feel like the Brits, having entrenched along here, would give up anymore. I feel like they've made their decision to make a stand, and it's not a bad one as far as I'm concerned. A combination of my frustration, but probably even more, I'm still uncomfortable with the system and the idea that artillery can't fire unless it's under a reserve marker. But the Italians moved into contact. Grab Buck, we got a marker there, so I'll just leave it there. But that one won't accumulate very quickly. Like, there should be a second marker there at this point, because this is over here in City Bari. It's still not available. Like, the reward isn't available, so if I end up capturing it, it will not accrue to me. But I set myself up for attacks here and here, flew my air forces in, and I only got it disordered on the City Barani stack. Now, technically, the Brits had their fighter knocked down, made inactive, and I wouldn't want to fly my last bomber in range where it could be intercepted. So I would be with no defenses at this point. But these both moved little enough that they could have had, actually I don't know about these guys. Let me check these guys. These guys might not be able to fire. But with the headquarters here cheating in that way, I can channel enough firepower through that I can try to defend the line. The thing had to move, and it was more than a movement point. So these guys would not be able to fire. These guys are able to, though. They did not move. So the British artillery managed to stop this. Here, the Italians went with an attack anyway, and I lost 2 steps, one of value, the other was off an option, but of value I lost one of the Ariete good units. It's rebuildable. It's a regiment. I don't know what that's going to cost me. It's not good. It's not great to lose my good stuff, but got to batter my way through, right? But for the Brits, their lead unit was this. They took an option in order to try to hold this space. It's real iffy whether I want to or not. It's a 7 RTR. It's a 5 quality unit. Of course, it might just get withdrawn or replaced or something. Its replacement is a fucking 2 quality unit. Like, there's no way I'm going to rebuild that thing, right? Like, it's just not going to happen unless something happens to upgrade it. And, oh, do we have that here? 7 RTR is replaced with the 7 RTR, no rebuild. Yeah, this is just such a painful loss that I may just want to give up the hacks and fall back, even though I've got an entrenchment here and close terrain and all kind of cool stuff. Geez, man. I just don't know if I can. I hate to lose such a good unit. I mean, I'm going to lose it eventually anyway. I was expecting to win the fight, honestly. I'm going to think about this. I won't bother you with what I choose to do, but yeah, it's that's a hard call, man. I will bother you with it. I took the destruction. Why? Because if I don't, there could be a turn order flip, a double turn for the Italians. They could overrun the rest of that unit and just, you know, smash the shit out of it. Well, they wouldn't want to overrun it, but they could hit the rest of that unit. There's not a lot I can do about it. I wouldn't have a reserve marker here still. I wouldn't have any capability to react. If they took their double turn, that would just happen, and that's no good at all. So I took a loss because I might lose more by giving up the defensive terrain and being out in the open where I could get, like, smashed, basically. But yeah, and that will move us up to where we're going to be hitting into the March turn. I've got to do all the setup and shit for March. I don't think I want to do that at night. I think that's just too hard. The lighting is bad enough for just playing, and that's kind of the hard part of the game. So we're going to load this one up. But what's happened? Well, I added another cheat in, letting the British keep a headquarters here so that they can actually defend Egypt. Another part of the what-if story here. None of this is included in possibilities for the rules. I just feel like, damn it, it should have been a command decision to give up that ground rather than a forced situation. And I don't see why the Brits with a headquarters have to give up that easily. Now, they're going to get blasted out of here, and it's going to hurt them, and maybe it'll hurt them more, and maybe they deserve, you know, maybe it'll be worse than giving up the ground would be. but it should be my fucking choice. It shouldn't be forced on me by the fact that, oh yeah, well, now, it's not simple scripting or anything like that. It's worse than that. It's like you don't have any headquarters left anymore. You have no command structure. The entire command of the British Army has fallen apart. And why? It's not like I've just been overrun. It's not like, you know, Africa Corps came storming across and hit me. I've got a prepared line and I'm taking it. You know, you might convince me that this should go away under the historical circumstances. The blitz that came, you know, after after Beta Fram, the blitz that the Africa Corps and the Ariete Division and whatnot made to plow through the British positions may have caught them so off guard, but I don't feel like there's any argument that these guys would be caught off guard and would just dissolve. I just don't buy it. And you know, especially since we're building up a defensive line, we gave up the initiative, deciding we can't take Bardia, and decided to throw a defensive line in place. It wouldn't just dissolve, man. It just wouldn't. If that line completely dissolves, and I feel like the British are running and collapsing completely, I don't mind taking that headquarters off. I don't think that they should be completely without a headquarters under the circumstances I'm looking at. So, again, making some shit up. I'll put a counter on here. Not that it's going to matter. I think Sidi Barani is going to fall before that second month is up, which will be somewhere around here in March.